Inside Stylist podcast, where we talk all about interiors, with interviews with interior stylists, writers and the big names in interiors, from brands and PRs to artists and designers. I also catch up with industry experts in the know and get them to share all their knowledge and advice. There's so much to talk about. I'm your host, Emma Morton-Turner, an interior stylist and a writer with a ton of experience. I set up InsideStylist.com so I could share all that interiors love with you. So don't forget to head on over to the website for not only the show notes from today's episode, but for links to interior stylists, writers and assistants profiles, and a ton of inspiration. But for now, enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Inside Stylist podcast. This is episode 100. I am so excited that it's 100 already. It feels like I started 5 minutes ago and 6 years ago all in one go. So I wanted to do something big for this episode, and I was chatting with my chief insider, Claire Parkin, and she said, why don't I do a roundup of 10 of the best podcast episodes? And I thought, how do you rate something as the best? How do you say it's the best? Is it because of numbers? Is it because it's the one that keeps getting asked about? So I thought I would do is pull together some of the most useful and some of the ones that I've had people ask me about, and just a general mix of ones that I think you will enjoy the most. Whether you are someone who's new and have never listened to any of these episodes, if that's you, hello. Or whether you are someone who hasn't listened to any of the earlier ones for a little while. Anyway, I'm just going to give you 10 that I think would be really good to listen to for this episode. So the first one, I'm actually going to start with the most popular podcast. I think he will be very surprised to hear this, but Aurélien Farjon, or Relly as all of us stylists call him, he was episode 87, and we talked about, or the episode was called, How Carving Out the Perfect Career All Started with Defining Aurélien Farjon's Personal Style. Now, Relly used to be known as the Purple Stylist, and he was very much about colour, and he used his kind of personal style to push what he wanted to do. And he had a really interesting way of approaching brands that he wanted to work with. And I found it really inspiring. And obviously so did a lot of other people, because that is the biggest download of all the episodes we've had. Relly was the top episode. So Relly, thank you very much for being on the podcast. He was 87. Another really popular one was number 72, which was really getting to grips with colour with Karen Huller. Now, Karen Huller wrote The Little Book of Colour, and it's a book that I kept seeing all over Instagram, and I just wanted to get hold of it. I actually saw Karen at a press event, and I went not fangirl, kind of the opposite, got a bit nervous and didn't have the guts to go up and talk to her because she was with a lot of people and she kept getting whisked away to be interviewed and to give quotes. And I just wanted to go, hi, will you be on my podcast? So I finally got in touch with her. I got her book, which I absolutely adore. And when I teach styling for interiors for Chelsea School of Arts, I share that book with the students because I think it's one of the most useful books for understanding colour, whether it's fashion, interiors, how you feel about a space. It's just brilliant. Karen came to my house, which is scary in itself because you just think, oh my goodness, my house is a mess. I'm going to have to tidy it up. And we talked about how colour affects people, how it affects your mood, how it affects brands. And she stayed for hours and we just talked for hours, and she's now a great friend. And I absolutely adore listening to her talking about colour. She's so inspirational. So it's no surprise that that was also a very popular episode. One of my favourite, this is proper fangirl moment, one of my favourite was during one of the lockdowns, I got to talk to Annie Sloan. Now, Annie Sloan was actually booked in to record a podcast with me before the lockdowns happened. I was going to head off to her home in Oxford and we were going to record them because pre-lockdown I recorded all my podcasts in person. I still will do that because I think it's really nice to sit in a room and chat with someone. And I love Annie Sloan paints. I love what Annie Sloan has done for me as someone who wants to be creative. And I talked to her through Instagram. I'm pretty sure it is her because of the way she responds. If it isn't her, I'm just going to pretend that it is because I love talking to her. But we got on a Zoom call, we said hello, and she was so gracious, and I just felt like I was talking to someone who I had known and met many times and was like a great friend before. I've met her once, but years and years ago. So I am a super Annie Sloan fan, because if you haven't done any painting with chalk paint, she is the master. She has so many videos. She has this whole group of inspirational people who use her paints on her website. And just the things that people do, the creativity that you can do with the paints and the lacquers. And people were painting floorboards with chalk paint in bathrooms, and it was lasting forever. So the episode where I talked to her was episode 91. And I have to say, she was fabulous, and it was lovely. Just so lovely. Also, go check out her Instagram, because she did so many chats. She did IGTVs on her Instagram account, which is at Annie Sloan Home. And yeah, she's really, really lovely to talk to. She's so passionate about what she does. So I think that's the crux of what the podcast is for me, is that you talk to people who are so just so passionate about what they do, whether it's someone who's designing furniture or pulling together interior brands for a website, or it's new paint colours for a paint company. It's really inspiring to hear the stories behind them, to hear how they come together. And that was what Annie Sloan was for me. Talking of colour, another very inspirational person I spoke to was Emma Detting of Kelling Designs. She was episode 61, talking colour, pattern and artists with interior designer Emma Detting of Kelling Designs was the title of that one. So when I met Emma, I was quite in awe. She pulls paint colours and patterns and textures together in a way I've never seen done before. And I was just mesmerised. I went to a press launch at her place in Chelsea, and I just wanted everything in there, you know, and you start stroking the walls, because she's got velvet wallpaper, and it was just divine. I just remember one of the questions that I asked her was, if someone wants to know how to pull colours and textures and patterns together, how do you make that work? And she said, it all works. Who's to say when one thing doesn't work and one thing does? And I thought, oh, she has no idea how good she is at this, because I don't think you can just throw anything together. You can do things like that, and it just looks like you've thrown up colours and patterns. Emma has a way of putting it together that it just looks so stylish. So talking to her was, again, a really, really inspirational episode. Another podcast where I had the guests come to my house, and I had to tidy up and make it look really, really neat on a Monday morning at about 9 o'clock, which after the weekend and everyone being home was not a challenge at all, I promise you, was episode 56, talking everything mid-century modern with Mini Modern's Keith Stevenson and Mark Hampshire. Again, they Mini Modern guys, they put out a book, and it was brilliant, because I do like a bit of mid-century modern, but less the furniture, more the china, the wallpapers, the patterns. I really love vases, and I just love the fugly stuff. Essentially, I like the fugly stuff, and I'm always looking for it at vintage sales and boot sales. But to have these guys come and chat and talk about their books, and they were so charming, so charming. They were also up there in one of the most downloaded episodes. So if you haven't got their book, go get their book. I know they just put a new range of wallpaper, or I think they've brought out new colours in one of the ranges of their wallpapers. But again, if you go listen to them, they're so knowledgeable, but they also have a fabulous Instagram account, and every Monday they share a designer, and they do such detailed design work. Like, they just share everything about that person, and it's like a little lesson. It's really, really interesting. So I'm not surprised that has been one of my most popular episodes. The next one I'm going to share is episode 74, which is how Clarissa Hulse went from broke to brilliant. So I've met Clarissa when I was just freelance, very newly freelance, about 10 years ago. I got invited by her PR to do screen printing with her in her workshop, and I loved it. It was such a great day. I mean, I've used a photo that was taken of me at that event as my profile picture so often, because I am beaming in it. It was such a fun day. It was quite a lot of people there. It was really fun to do it, but she's fabulous. You can just see how creative she is. So when I went back to this workshop, probably about 8 years later, We've been chatting. I always message her on Instagram. I'll comment on her posts. I feel like I know her. I do tend to think people are my friends once I've met them, whether they're, I've met them for 3 seconds or 300 times. I will still think of people as my new best friends. So I would chat to Clarissa, and I'd bumped into her at press launches later on where she was showcasing her new ranges. So when she invited me to her apartment, which was above the workshop, to interview her, I thought I knew what I was going to be talking to her about. I thought I knew what I was going to be getting. And actually, she shared such personal disasters that had turned around and made her as successful as she is now because of what she'd been through. And I just wasn't expecting it. And goodness me, when you hear a story about someone and you think, I thought you were amazing before, but now I just think you're incredible. She's just got the most beautiful style. She's got a look of her own, and I just love that. I do love her look, but when you hear how she overcame lots and lots of problems, it's really, really inspiring. And I think that is why I've put it into my top 10, because I think it was really, really important to remember that sometimes things go wrong. It's not the end. It's just the hurdle. You move on and you go on to further greatness because of it. So I loved that one. Next on my list is number 45. Now this one I keep recommending to people because it comes up time and time again. So I thought I would mention it just so anyone who needs to know this can know where to go and find it. Number 45 is how to create a rate card. Now I recorded this because it came up at the very beginning of building Inside Stylists, and people saying, I don't know how to charge for something. And I would always say, I hated talking money. And actually, if someone said to me, what's your day rate? I would just reply with one sentence. And that one sentence didn't share the kind of 10, 15, 20 years of experience that I had. So I created a rate card, and that rate card would share exactly what I'm all about, who I've worked with, brands, magazines, all that sort of stuff. And then it would share my pricing for day, styling rate, prep rate, what my assistants are, all that sort of thing. And that has become a very popular episode, especially since the whole pandemic time. Very interesting how it's got so popular so recently. Another creative. Number 54 is how Anna Jacobs went from city law firm to artist and designer in one fell swoop. Now, Anna Jacobs, actually, when I met her, I went to her place, which you've probably seen all over Instagram, and she hadn't done any of the painting. It was just very white. I think she'd only moved in about a month or two earlier, and she had all her stuff, all her lamps, and she had artwork, and she had beautiful furniture, but she hadn't done any wrapping of her fridge. She hadn't painted this incredible stripe or kind of chevron design in her bathroom. She hadn't done this staircase. The colours. I mean, if I see certain colours now, I think that's an Anna Jacob colour. She needs to do a paint range because her colours are fabulous. But again, a bit like Clarissa, you hear about the stories of what she's been through and how she's kind of carved this incredible career for herself. And she was just so much fun. So really, really enjoyed chatting with her, and really think you will enjoy listening to her telling us how she got to where she is today. Number 70 is the next on the list, and that's what's the difference between an interior stylist and an interior designer? Oh, if I had £1 for every time someone asked me that question. In one fell swoop, or one tiny nugget, if I wanted to tell you in a sentence, it would be interior designers design space. They design homes for real people. People walk in and see the entire space. Interior stylists know how to make areas look spectacular, whether they're inspiring, whether they're teaching, whether they're selling, whatever it is, we know how to frame the picture to make the whole shot look beautiful and know what the hero product is. But there are more differences. So go listen to episode 70 if you want to know more about that. And the last one, the one that I think is probably one of the most important ones when it comes to styling and understanding what the law says, is when I did the episode 88 that was talking all things copyright in photo shoots with Margaret Haig from the Intellectual Property Office. Now, this stemmed from time after time people were asking questions about, can I put this into a shoot? Am I going to get sued for using this piece of art, this piece of furniture, this piece of craftsmanship? And it got to the point where I thought, I really need to go to the person who knows this and can really tell us definitively what is and isn't allowed. After I got off this call, this was a Friday afternoon, I remember talking to Margaret. She was really lovely. I'd sent her all the questions over in advance. People were asking questions during, like, all the members of Inside Stylist could watch the recording live and send questions in, and she answered all those questions. She was absolutely brilliant. We answered all of those questions. And still to this day, I mean, this was episode 88, so this was months ago, I still get people asking me for advice on copyright. And I just say, I'm not sure, go listen to that episode. She is the expert. Or check in with the Intellectual Property Office, because they have so much information on there. And it actually, I think prior to speaking to Margaret, I might have been nervous to go and look at the Intellectual Property Office's website, because I would have thought it was to be too jargony, but it isn't. It's really plain. It's really simple. But Margaret answers the questions about specifically working in shoots, what is and isn't allowed, how you can work around things, how you can make things work. I am so much more aware of it now. And that is literally why I started the artist list on Inside Stylist. So if you go to the website Inside Stylist, there is an artist list in the directory. There's about, I think, 15 artists there who are happy to have their products used in photography for editorial if they're getting a credit, or for a higher fee if it's going to be a commercial shoot. Members of Inside Stylist get the big list, which has got 50 artists in, with lots more options on choosing. So that brings me to 10. So nice quick episode, but gosh, I think I just remember every single conversation I've had when recording these podcasts, and they are absolutely my just pure joy. I just love recording them. All those people, I love following them. I love seeing how, I mean, Anna Jacobs, when I spoke to her, she was selling her lampshades and she had artwork and all sorts of things, but she's just gone stratospheric, and it's just so lovely to see. Anyway, episode 100. There are 10 episodes. If you want to check out any of these, I will put all the links in the show notes so you can find them. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for celebrating episode 100. Really, really happy to have you around. Till next time. Thanks for listening to the Inside Stylist podcast. You can find all the details from today's episode over in the show notes on InsideStylist.com. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you would head on over to iTunes and rate and review it. It's the best way to help other people find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, bye for now.